You need that in the know.
What?
Okay.
Ding dong.
Yeah.
Make a difference.
All right.
I used to work,
Hey, John, how?
Morning, how are you?
I used to work over there
Well,
putting the paper together. but-
Yes, John Anderson is usually here to do that, but I'll do it until somebody gets here.
There's something moving.
Roy,
All right, can you hear me?
thank you.
That's a pretty good size. That's a pretty good size campus.
I think Richard got us reconnected.
Well, it's reconnected.
Very green.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, you can hear us?
I'm here.
Oh, you can hear.
Yeah, yeah. And that microphone is working, so they should hear you just fine.
Yeah, I hear.
Good.
Watch what I say. You know, under my breath.
Mumble, mumble, mumble.
No, that's all right, you can do that. They took your table away, I don't know, went up close and personal.
Well, so I'll be closer to my.
Yeah.
Good morning, man. Good morning. Good to see you.
Running up those stairs.
Good time, good time.
Always
good.
I hope you all did your 52 chapters of homework.
Yeah, right.
I may have to finish out in the hall.
Actually, I was reading James instead.
Yeah, right.
Have you read it?
Being confused because there's different endings depending on the source. I don't get it.
Oh,
That National Geographic, I found out. The Bible, I have,
We must have everybody moving a little slow this morning, huh?
they have where they excavated underneath the Dome of the Rock all the way down to the first temple.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
really?
I can't understand the idea. It's funny how they're this biggest temple in Jerusalem. This seems like a congregation.
that's way down there, man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the areas of this, places.
Oh, okay.
This is the trouble does.
Man, Dome of the Rock, that's where the
No,
temple
no,
was.
it's all Greek to me. Yeah.
Well, you know what, Tuna said to Charlie.
We already tested it. It's all good.
Microphone working.
Boy, I really look like something over there. Even television.
Yeah, see.
You,
No, you're going to January.
you are on television too.
That's not my. Thank you. And they must have been there, you know, 30 years.
See myself through my mind.
Computer screen.
It's worse and worse shaving every morning. Actually, that's the thing that makes you think nothing's changed. Like, I'm just the way I was 50 years ago, practically. Every day, you're the same person.
Well, it's not.
Hey, Roy, we finally got the sound system.
My mother would get old.
Yeah, he's sitting here.
Who said it, father, and she will like, who's that old bag, you know, because of herself. You know, she feels like she felt like she always did. And I was like, oh, stop all that. Now it's like, now I kind of know.
Yeah, you're beginning to understand.
I think she'll be all
Yeah, it's every once in a while, you see that picture of 50 years ago.
But I had more hair.
So did I. I just want to say, you don't see most of the.
Well, Richard and Alex's solution is this.
Well, everybody do their own thing.
Yeah.
It's just the way of things, that's all you can.
I think Sirach has something to say, but it's something to say about everything. We started. Driving. And I printed out some excerpts from Sirach. If you have. It's 51 chapters. I'm not gonna read all of that. I just picked some highlights. You have in your version.
Thank you.
Thank you for the highlight.
Right, I made my own version. I didn't like the way that the website.
You just cut and pasted like he wrote. And you pick the ones you like.
Right, well, highlights.
Why not? His babes,
Huh?
his babes.
But smaller than last week. Let's begin. We like to open us with a word of prayer. Or no? Yeah. No one do. Okay, let us pray. Holy God, in this time of Advent and waiting, we seek your light in the darkness in a world so hungry for wisdom. Help us with an open mind and heart to learn from those who have come before us, to guide us and teach us in your ways. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
The Eagles really did today.
Yeah, so just to start, I mean, I sent the links. I mean, this is a huge book. You see,
It is. It took me all afternoon to read it.
Really?
did you really read? Oh,
You read it all?
I'm not used to it. Usually if I assign a paragraph, it's like, I didn't have time. So I don't assume anybody.
Well,
I don't assume anybody does.
I kept saying, oh my goodness, that's
So I actually like more discussion. I don't want to be too lecturely. So particularly with a book like this, to be honest, I'm not. I mean, this class was an opportunity for me to delve into it. This is not something that's really taught in Presbyterian seminary, and that's not in our lectionary. But I was glad to encounter it a little bit. So for those of you who glanced at it, I'm going to put you on the spot. Any reaction or thoughts for anything you saw in there?
Well, it seemed to me like it wasn't a novel. It was more like they had pasted different things that had been said by different people. And I don't know across how much time.
Mhm.
I think it must have.
But there was also some echoes of the way that Jesus called people on things.
What was that?
Somewhere in there, you know, I would say, oh, that's what he did when he was calling the Pharisees on you err.
So some of it sounds like things
Yeah.
that Jesus said.
Yeah,
Yeah, that brings up a point. Number 7. Says, so my Godfather. And my grandfather Jesus.
Yeah, well, Jesus is
Well-
not an unusual name.
Oh, okay.
This is not.
When was this written?
well,
I'll get to I'll get to the boring part. No, Jesus, well, I mean, historical things, I don't want to really get into this. I'll just
There
say
are
that
lots of
you study books like this, it's
just like there
pages
still
and
are.
pages of the historical context, 45 pages on the literary techniques. It's a- I can get kind of drawn into that. It's like, this is church, you know, and it's like, so what is, I would like to get into what we get out of it. So what, as Christians in the 21st century, you know, does any of this speak to us, what relevance it might have? I think it's right to put it in its literary historical context. But some people might say, again, from my usual age group that I teach, so what? Why should we care? Right? So hopefully we can get into that a bit. But this is a different, so just you see the beginning, the prologue, we'll mention that. That's written by the author's grandson. Because the book was written, we know now it was written in Hebrew. So even though it's written in the 2nd century, and I'll get to the specifics in a minute, it was written in that Hellenistic period. It was written in Hebrew. Okay, so when the rabbis left this out of Jewish canon, there might have been other reasons. One of the reasons was really going to take things written in Hebrew. Now we know from the Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, from discoveries in Egypt that were found that there are Hebrew versions of this. So what's happening here in the prologue is his grandson is explaining why he had it translated into Greek, so that more people could read it.
Well, when I read this grandfather thing, you know, like, geez, that set my whole tone into a different time frame. Yeah.
Grandfather Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is also-
Yeah. That's what I said. 200.
But here you see the grandson really. The prologue is interesting. It's actually kind of an easy read compared to much of what we find. And many great teachings have been given to us, the law and prophets and the others that follow them, and for these we should praise Israel for instruction and wisdom. Now, those who read them must not only themselves understand them, but also must be lovers of learning, be able to speaking and writing to help the outsiders. So my grandfather, Jesus, Yeshu, common Jewish name, who had devoted himself especially to the reading of the law and the prophets and the other books. You can go through that. So you're invited to read this. And he's kind of hinting, if you could, you should read it in the original, but I'm doing the best I can. And then 27 through 36 gives some very specific historical references. 38th year of the reign of Woodgarty, when I came to Egypt, I found a copy. It seemed highly necessary that I should myself devote some diligence and labor to the translation of this book, and I'm doing it day and night. So the idea is the original author, who is Jesus, son of Sirach, Jesus, son of Sirach. So it's called Sirach. Sirach is a Hebrew name, so you're getting this. He probably lived about 180 BCE. And the translation into Greek, we know from that instruction about the year 132 BCE. So we're really getting close to the time of Jesus. It's probably one of the books that's closest, about a century before Jesus.
It was Greek, huh?
Hmm?
Greek,
What was written, now we know it was written in Hebrew. But here's the grandson saying, but I translated it to Greek, so
Yeah,
more
but-
people have access to it.
And the thing of it is, I love it that he says, when you translate into another language, it's hard to capture meaning, and I know that from reading Bible in English and in Portuguese, that the connotations come out differently. I mean, the essential message is the same, but in a given sentence.
Well, that's an also translation is interpretation. And, when I'm teaching, I was like, Jesus spoke Aramaic and then went to Greek, and now we're putting it into English. We're
And
doing it
there's
as we
Latin
can.
in between.
Well, no, King James actually came down on gold tablets from heaven.
And it's word for word exactly. as it
I saw there's legit dating site, I forget what.
With the B.
that's Shakespeare, isn't it?
I'm messing with that. But they call it the 1610ers or something. It's like a dating site for people who just affirm that the King James is the only true word of God. But you don't find it compatible.
But that's like that's Shakespeare, isn't it?
Anyway. I mean, really, I mean, it's a masterpiece of literature. Certainly, 23rd Psalm will always be King James for me, but you know, it's just. Yeah, so it's not, so I love this prologue. I mean, it's probably the most. It's, so if any book, I'm gonna say the Bible now, I know it's not in our canon, but any book in the Bible, this is one that we're probably most certain about who wrote it, and why they wrote it, and when they wrote it. And actually, it is probably from the pen of one author. So it looks like it's just maybe since it's kind of cobbled together, but it's not. It really is from the hand of one author.
Well,
So now, again, when they found the Hebrew version, there were some things at the end and prayers, and that's why if you look at a full translation, you see something. But pretty much 95% of it is similar. So. Put the date up here. He's talking. So the author, Sirach. This is like last time, so we looked at the wisdom of Solomon, living in this time when the Eastern Mediterranean had become Hellenized. So completely, you know, subsumed into Greek culture. So the educated Jews were knew Greek, they didn't know Hebrew, they spoke Greek. They were educated in Greek philosophy and literature and rhetorical styles. And that's the world in which those books are written. So what they're really trying to do, if you look at the main theme of this book, is to say that true wisdom is found in the Torah. It's found in the law of Moses in our religious history. Because what they were finding is, the author here, is that particularly the younger generations, they were rejected. They loved, the cool thing to be was to be Greek, and Greek ideas were better than Hebrew ideas. And Greek philosophy had more wisdom than anything that we have. So these authors are trying to say that, believe me, he's Hellenistic. I mean, you can see even if it's written in Hebrew, it has Greek influence. But we need to come back to our roots. Don't assimilate, don't reject your past. A true wisdom is found in the wisdom of our mothers and fathers. Now I'm being kind of modern by saying mothers and fathers, because if you read parts of Sirach, it's quite by modern standards misogynistic. Okay, it's really beware of wicked women. Get a wife who's going to do things like this. I didn't copy those chapters. You can find that. But he is in the second, first century BC man. So that's part of it. But he's really saying rooting wisdom is in the Torah. So there's this fear that we're losing people. People are losing their piety, they're losing their devotion. And don't forget the rituals, don't forget the prayer, don't forget your identity. And that's really what's woven throughout this entire book. This fear of the culture disappearing. I don't know, maybe it can relate to that in some ways. Oh, yeah. I mean, is there any, you know, we can talk about what's going on in mainline churches and churches in general. I just saw the news that, you know, in the United Kingdom, for the first time ever, less than 50% self-identify as Christian. You know, the Church of England is basically becoming like a monarchy. It's just there for tradition. It's not.
It seems the
really
older
power.
who becomes, the less religion, the less original religion, at least gets practiced. All of Europe is kind of that way. We're only 250 years old. It's disappearing here at a rapid clip.
well, it depends. Fundamentalists.
What's that?
There's another rise of, we'll call it Christianity. Big mega churches and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But even they are losing.
Yeah.
The novelties wore off.
Is it? That's what really is.
School music and things.
Well, it's about a generation.
It was growing pretty big, pretty good. You know, I don't know.
I think it still serves for me, people are looking at the traditions.
Right.
So we don't find it there anymore, so whatever the latest book, celebrity that comes out, tweets something, that's the new wisdom we're supposed to come and start teaching, but. I get so, in the morning, I had the mistake of watching like the morning network news shows or something, which I shouldn't subject myself to. There's always some big expert on the couch that's telling me how to raise children or how to have self-esteem. It's like, what made you such a big expert? And I read something like this and like, maybe it's a little bit misogynistic, but there's more wisdom in this book than anything just dispensed on the Today Show couch. But people are just, all right. But people are just reluctant to look at this. It's like, what? Because I read
Well,
some of these passages
they
and
don't bother because they think it's passé. They haven't read it.
It's old news.
Old news.
But I also think that
And major news.
it's in the news now, the Methodist Church. Why
Well,
belong to a
the more
Methodist church
things
when even
change, the
they
more
can't
there's-
agree?
Mhm.
I mean, they are slittering, and stuff. It's hard to want to join in that kind of
No,
disturbance.
sure, I mean, what people see in the institutional church is not that appealing.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys can't agree, then, what am I supposed to think?
Hi, Susan. I think that to some extent is a matter of communication, we have. What, I think I heard my grandmother saying that whenever somebody got married, it was with somebody that lived within 2 miles, right? They all lived and interacted only with people right in the neighborhood.
In a community.
And we're talking to people everywhere, right? Twitter,
Yeah.
Elon Musk, go.
I think he's held up as a negative example in here.
By name.
It's obvious that people are gonna have different opinions across the world, right?
Right, but now, like you say, with social media and everything, you see it, you
Right,
hear about
right,
it, where
right.
before. If
Those that were news shows.
somebody else was having a problem, next state, you would never know. I mean, because it's not a. But, yeah.
I remember I came to the United States one time, people said, "Oh, how did you survive all the revolution in Brazil?" I said, "What revolution?" About anything. Yeah.
But I were like last year, what with the seniors to the Mexican border with Frontera de Cristo, on a Presbyterian border mission. We went to the Mexican side and. And they say, what, these people get up so early in the morning to make breakfast for us, and they look at the ministry down there on the Mexican side and. To help battered women or to domestic violence, help people with drug addictions or helping the immigrants, and they say. It was astonishing to them that the churches were doing things like this. I mean, to them, that's not the church. They see, I'm talking about young people I teach is judging, condemning, and intolerant. They say people really do things like that. Or even when we take them to small little churches here in New Mexico, it's like, wow, look, it's only 12 people, but look at all the stuff they do. I think it's just I don't think they realize because they're not set what they're exposed to. But anyway, wisdom. Okay. So I guess we've covered that. So Hellenism taking hold, the other classes, the author here is saying we need to find true wisdom in our roots. So let's look at it. I just picked some highlights here. Sirach 1:2. Well, let me say it. It seems like a mishmash because there's all kinds of literary styles in here. So some of it sounds like Proverbs. There's the mashals, the Hebrew word for what you found in Proverbs. It's the couples, wisdom. But where this book is different is it really groups them thematically. Whereas Proverbs really can seem like all over the place. Like here's a series of Proverbs about how to raise your children. Here's a series of Proverbs about watching your tongue. They're put together.
And the last part is mind your manners. This is how you do it.
Yeah, I include that so you can see some of the practical advice. We're looking at how to behave in a banquet. With etiquette. There's some really technical stuff in here.
Yeah, and behavior at a banquet was something that Jesus was repeating somewhere along.
Did it say how long it took him to write this?
I presume you wrote it. I don't.
I just wondered years or.
But there are hymns in here, there's prayers in here, there's blessed, it sounds like the Beatitudes, that blessed are, woe to, woe to, woe to. You're starting to see that type. Various didactic or teaching
Some of it
styles,
sounds
but it
like
is put together thematically. And what you're seeing in the beginning starts with in praise of wisdom. Now, this should sound familiar because this is like a personification of wisdom as a woman. All wisdom is from the Lord, so I'm looking right at the in praise of wisdom on the front page. And with him it remains forever. The sand of the sea, the drops of rain, the days of eternity, who can count? Verse 4, wisdom was created before all things, and prudent understanding from eternity. The root of wisdom, to whom has been revealed first subtleties, who knows them? Verse 9, it's he who created her, he saw her, he took her measure, he poured her out upon all his works, upon all the living, according to his gift, he lavished her on all those. The really beginning again, a beautiful phrase of wisdom. Now now you're really getting into harnessing the tradition here. You know, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. You don't know fear doesn't mean be afraid, but honoring and reverencing God before all things. So, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Showing you this here, we don't need to read through the whole thing. Is that this is an acrostic in the Hebrew. It's 22 verses, and each verse begins with the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This happens, I forget which psalm it is too. I think it's a psalm. But this is a device that you begin each verse, so it's alphabet, gimel, dalet, so you're going through the whole. And I didn't put it in here, but the last chapter is also an acrostic. So it begins with these two prayers written in this very literary structured form. It's kind of bookends for the whole thing. So there is a wonderful structure too. We look at verse 28, though. Do not disobey the fear of the Lord. Do not approach him with a divided mind. I want to point that out because when we start looking at James next week, or you're going to hear a lot of that. Double-mindedness in the book of James in the New Testament, that's a problem. There'll be, that's one of my favorite Greek words, goes two minds. Don't have a divided mind. That's two paths of wisdom. Well, we're going to look at James, and again, it wasn't trying to suggest you. We're not going to. We could do just a Bible study of James, but to really see how James is using all of these wisdom words. So we have this in our own tradition, in our canon. Don't be a hypocrite before others. Keep watch over your lips. Don't exalt yourself, or you may fall into dishonor upon yourself. The Lord will reveal your secrets and overthrow you before the whole congregation, because you did not come in the fear of the Lord, and your heart was full of deceit. Excuse me. So there is a tension here in this book between wrath and mercy. I mean, you need to get on the right path, or God's not going to be happy. But God is merciful. Duties toward God. If you go to verse 10, consider the generations of them on page 3 of 10. Consider the generations of old and see, has anyone trusted in the Lord and been disappointed? Has anyone persevered in the fear of the Lord and been forsaken? Has anyone called upon him and been neglected? Where the Lord is compassionate and merciful, he forgives sins and saves in times of distress. We're coming back to a more Proverbs understanding of wisdom here. It gets complex. There's semantic, but basically, if you're faithful, righteous, you'll be blessed. It may not be in both conditions. They'll make it very clear that having a lot of money doesn't mean that you're blessed, and having a lot of children doesn't mean that you're blessed. It's the type of children that you have. It'll say it's better than no kids. It's better than no kids than a bunch of rotten. So he qualifies it, but there is kind of in the world consequences. It's not a whole lot of acting.
There's no way we can be satisfied.
Basically, I said last time we're looking at the wisdom of Solomon. Job is really kind of a universal wisdom book. Remember, the Lord's hardly ever mentioned. And Proverbs is very practical. Ecclesiastes. These are ones that are saying that those are books that draw or almost have a universalist perspective. Maybe you could do that, but again, when you're in your own land, with your own culture, with your own people, you can have these big thoughts. This is a minority community in the Hellenistic Eastern Mediterranean world. Saying we're losing it. So we don't have time for the big idea. We have to ground everything in our own traditions. Because woe to you who have lost patience, what will you do when the Lord's reckoning comes? So I'm just saying some place here for the Jobish speculation that they may be suffering. Why do we suffer? It's deal with it and just fear the Lord. But what he's getting into here, verse 15, 2:15, page 3. Those who fear the Lord will not disobey his words, and those who love him will keep his ways. Those who fear the Lord will seek his favor, and those who love him will be filled with his law. Next page. Those who fear the Lord will prepare their hearts and will humble themselves before him. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, but not into the hands of mortals. We're equal to his majesty, is his mercy. First of all, that verse 2:18 is almost a direct quote from 2 Samuel 24:14 in the prayer of David. So what you'll find throughout this book is, which is unusual in this type of wisdom literature, is direct quotations from previous scripture. And he doesn't say, and David said, he just throws it in there throughout. You'll also find plenty of allusions to Adam, to Eve, to Moses, to the Israelites in the wilderness. Yet not being explained, it's just in there. So again, those who have ears to hear, let them hear. So everything is interwoven with these references to the Israelite tradition.
And you need to be an Israelite to read it, really. Yeah.
Because that's his audience. This isn't written for everybody.
Right.
This is written for Jews who the author feels are getting their identity.
And they're up against paganism, right? That's what it comes down to.
But again, the intellectuals and the sophisticated are saying, why are we going to bother with this old Semitic? That's not their language. Ancient desert stuff when we have Aristotle, Plato, right?
Yeah.
Right. But what's suggested here in these passages, chapter 2, woe to the going back to page 3, verse 12. Woe to timid hearts and to slack hands, and to the sinner who walks a double path. What often interpret the double path here saying the Greek way and our way. You can't do both. Woe to the faint heart who have no trust. Don't have trust in the wisdom of our tradition. Woe to you have lost patience. So don't be lured away. This is where true wisdom dwells, is in our tradition, to the Torah. Thoughts? Anything that jumps out. Even in 18 minutes, Paul, he's quoting David, but clearly the hands of mortals, by this he means the Hellenistic philosophers. Don't fall into worldly wisdom. And again, you're going to find this in James, the wisdom from above and the wisdom from below. So now we're skipping ahead to verse 19. The difference between true and false wisdom, some volunteer to read that. The whole of
The
wisdom.
whole of wisdom is fear of the Lord. And in all wisdom, there is a fulfillment of the law.
It's positive. I see that. The Torah, the law, that's where wisdom comes.
The knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, nor is there prudence in the counsel of sinners. There is a cleverness that is detestable, and there is a fool who merely lacks wisdom. Better are the God-fearing who lack understanding, and the highly intelligent who transgress the law. There is a cleverness that is exact but unjust, and there are people who abuse favors to gain a verdict. There are villains bowed down in mourning, but inwardly they are full of deceit. They hide their faces and pretend not to hear. But when no one notices, they will take advantage of it. Even if lack of strength keeps them from sinning, they will nevertheless do evil when they find the opportunity. People will be known by their appearances, and sensible people will be known when first met face to face. People's attire and hearty laughter, and the way they walk, proclaim God.
The editors here call this true and false wisdom. So what's false wisdom?
True and false.
Hypocritical.
Yeah, because lots, this book is full of don't fall for
Of
appearances.
course, if they had a telephone, don't fall for the scams.
You don't need a telephone, you can have a lot of things to get.
It's scams in a number of ways.
No, they have to teach you to connect with what works.
What was that?
You have to connect with where it works.
Well, that's the whole idea. It's
Yes.
face to face, meeting
Yes,
them face to face.
exactly.
So again, there's 51 chapters to choose from, but there are many passages in here about hypocrisy and Ben Franklin, don't judge a book by its cover, don't be taken. Very practical. And you see, I would see this isn't a higher level than nothing against Proverbs. Proverbs has very sublime moments. That really was kind of a catechesis for young princes, for young men about how they should live a good life. This is clearly for older people who've had the experience of the world and warning them about the society that surrounds them. Well, that's what I was going to say. The one name Ecclesiasticus, I skipped saying that. That's another name. This book gets so confusing because it's called like 3 or 4 different things. But Ecclesiasticus really just means church book. So that's not the Hebrew name of it. That's the Greek name of it. And it was because it was they think it was Saint Cyprian who first called that an early church father, because they used to use this book. That's what it came in as for catechesis in the church, for teaching about wisdom. So it was actually used as a teaching book in the early church. So how to live together as in community. Then there's a whole passage about when. Go to chapter 20, verse 5. We're still on page 4 of 10. Some people keep silent and are found to be wise, while others are detested for being talkative. Some people keep silent because they have nothing to say. Others keep silent because they know when to speak. Yeah, it's very bold. The wise remain silent until the right moment, but the arrogant and the fool miss the right moment. Whoever talks too much is detested. Whoever pretends to authority is hated. Well, someone who acts like they have authority, they really don't have it, deserve it. Instead of that, you're not the boss of me. So read the anger and vengeance. I thought this was also kind of appropriate. And the volunteer. to read in verses anger and vengeance.
These also are abominations. It is gonna hold on to them. Eventually will face the Lord's vengeance, but he needs to stay account for their sins. Forgive your neighbor the wrong he has done. And your sin will be pardoned and you pray. Does anyone harbor anger against another and expect healing from God, the Lord? The people have no mercy toward those like themselves, and they didn't seek pardon for their own sins. But men who ignore those Father wrath, will make an atoning sacrifice for their sins. Remember the need of your life and set enmity aside. Remember corruption and death. Be true to the commandments. Remember the commandments and do not make angry with your neighbor. Remember the covenant with the Most High. Don't be false.
Forgive us our sins, trespasses,
Yeah. There you go.
of debts, as we forgive.
Sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Jesus
saying.
says, don't come make.
Lord's Prayer.
Make peace with your neighbor, go make peace with your neighbor.
Yeah.
And bring your offering. What
Mhm.
it's saying here. So you're starting to see that, you know, by the wisdom of Jesus. And he didn't go back, I mean, you know, he was the Son of God and Messiah, but this is part of his world too, and he has heard his wisdom as a young man.
No idea whose time that comes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, many of Jesus's teachings come from this tradition.
Mhm.
And I mean, the first 30 years of his life, Jesus going to the synagogue and hearing things, which then when he starts his own ministry, it's going to be appropriate. So these hopefully these apocryphal books sound more familiar, some of the older books. But what you see here, so you're getting this kind of practical advice, don't hold grudges against your neighbor, but see how the end is tied in, the commandments, the covenant, the Most High. All this practical wisdom to say this is not something that the Greeks taught us, we had this already. Part of our identity.
No restrictions, you're telling him, you hold anger against someone else, you're hurting yourself, you're looking for that.
Now I just put this in here, you can see some of the practical advice about etiquette in the back, we don't have to read that, but you go through.
But, 32 was, you know, pretty much spoken by Jesus too in the parable. Well, you know, don't go sit in the first place, you know, it's, don't-
Again, this sounds like part of Jesus's teaching, you go to back with. Don't exalt yourself.
But he read this too prior to and heard it in the temple.
We don't know that, but I look at the surprise.
Well, it was probably just in the culture at large,
Right.
you know,
I mean, it's
like
also
saying,
taken-
Especially now that we know that this book was originally written in Hebrew, translated into Greek. Jesus, not our Jesus, certainly not this one. Certainly knew some Greek. He couldn't have lived in that world. He probably knew it. I don't know if he could have understood this, but he knew enough Greek at least to get by in the Galilee. But whether it's the Greek or the
and
Hebrew, the
Europe,
Aramaic, this
people
was he
speak
would.
like 3 different languages, you know, especially when they live on borders of places. And I imagine that's the way it was around the Mediterranean, then with the Latin and the Greek and the Hebrew. They just,
They should ask everything.
Yeah.
right?
But going to synagogue, being among the elders, he was certainly for this type of language.
Well, all of this thing is just. Don't lose what we already have, right? Don't lose the old stuff.
Question is,
It's-
what language does God speak?
Esperanto.
oh,
All of
that
the.
was a Portugal guy who brought that into me.
That's a pretty good advice, sir. Speak, you who are older, for your right with accurate knowledge. Don't interrupt the music. When there's entertainment, don't pour out talk like in a movie theater. Look. Be quiet.
That makes so much behind.
Shut off your phone and the music.
Speak, you who are young, if you're obliged to, but no more than twice, and only if you're asked.
It's in the wisdom.
We need to print this out.
You didn't have the computer.
Leave in good time and don't be the last. Go home quickly and don't linger.
Very cool.
Use yourself, your art significant, don't sin through proud speech, but above all, bless your maker, who intoxicates you with his good gifts. True intoxication. But I thought that was amusing, but look, this is the same chapter, so this isn't, but then goes on to talk about providence of God. So when you get this practical advice, like you can see why you think it maybe just kind of was sewed together. But he's doing this on purpose. I'm giving you the kind of practical advice about how to be a good dinner guest. But let's not forget the larger picture of God's providence. A sensible person will not overlook a thoughtful suggestion. An insolent thought person will not be deterred by fear. But in verse 24, the one who keeps the law preserves himself, and the one who trusts the Lord will not suffer loss. And really at the heart of the book is chapter 36. Now, I just look back at that anger and vengeance thing, that'd be a nice call to worship, I think. I mean, call to confession. This prayer in the middle really is certainly the heart of someone that's volunteered to read that. Have mercy upon us. So this isn't, so right now, smack down in the notebook is this prayer. It's what we remember.
Have mercy upon us, O God of all, and put all the nations in fear of you. Lift up your hand against foreign nations and let them see your might. As you have used us to show your holiness to them, so use them to show your glory to us. Then we will know and we will have known, and there is no God but you, O Lord. Give new signs and work other wonders. Make your hand and right arm glorious. Rouse your anger and pour out your wrath. Destroy the adversary and wipe out the enemy. Hasten the day and remember the appointed time, and let people recount your mighty deeds. Let survivors be consumed in the fiery wrath, and may those who harm your people meet destruction. Crush the heads of hostile rulers. Say, there is no one but ourselves. Gather all the tribes of Jacob and give them their inheritance as at the beginning. Have mercy, O Lord, on the people who called by your name, on Israel, whom you have named your firstborn. Have pity on the city of your sanctuary, Jerusalem, the place of your dwelling. Fill Zion with your majesty and your temple with your glory. Bear witness to those whom you have created in the beginning and fulfill the prophecies spoken in your name. Reward those who wait for you. Let your prophets be found trustworthy. Hear, O Lord, the prayer of your servants according to your goodwill toward your people, and all who are on the earth will know that you are the Lord, God of the ages.
It's right in the
That
midst
is
of all
very tribal. Except, they say, others are welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
So just in the midst of chapters about the joy of a good wife and a wicked wife and, right attitudes towards riches and table etiquette and law and sacrifice, you get this very powerful lament song. This is a song
Yes.
in the lament form. Okay. Have mercy on us, O God.
I bashed the head of the infants.
Well, right. I know that's the end of what the Five Rivers of Babylon, what they always leave out in church. But what, I know we're uncomfortable with some of this vengeance language, but again, there's going back to that of being this. Well, you hear this, what's being echoed here, this type of language?
Well, the fact that they're always being run over and conquered. But it also, it echoes the whole history in a way of God creating his own people and giving them their own place and coming to this presence, coming to rest on Jerusalem.
The eye for the eye and for teeth.
This make your hand and right arm glorious.
Yes.
Destroy,
You
right,
act.
say, right out
You
the
act.
enemy.
You act.
This is echoing in Exodus.
Yeah.
Right. This is the language of almost the Song of Moses.
Yeah.
After the Exodus, that our enemies will be destroyed. And this is probably written in Egypt. So this is that idea we're in this alien culture. You don't think it's alien, but it is. And we claim the roots here. There's universal elements in here that everybody, there's passage in here that everyone's in the image of God. But again, it's this call to come back to our roots. And don't be consumed. Fill Zion with your majesty. Right? Bear witness to those who you created in the beginning. That's going back to Genesis. Lots of references to Genesis throughout this whole book. And the most explicit kind of litany, you saw a little bit of this in wisdom, but in the wisdom of Solomon, where it was going through the plagues of Egypt, and it was much more literary about going back and forth with kind of conversation. This is really just a list of the ancestors. So it goes from chapter 44 through the end of the book, 44 through 50, which let us now sing the praises of famous men, the Bible, page 7 of 10. That's a mistake. It shouldn't be Sirach 25, it's Sirach 44. My typo. So this is chapter, that's why I think 44. So let us now sing the praises of famous men, our ancestors and their generations. The Lord appointed them in great glory, his majesty from the beginning. So if you turn the page, of course, it's going to go all the way back to let's do this. Don't forget them. It's all about the covenant. You have Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now there's more about Moses. That's just at the end of the chapter. But you make you get the idea. Interestingly, there's more about Aaron than there is. I didn't put that in there. There's more about Aaron than there is about Moses. Interesting. And there are several verses on Phineas and Caleb. You know where that's coming from?
That was the priesthood
Aha.
assignment.
Really gives strong emphasis to the priests. Because the idea is don't neglect the temple and the ritual. The author here knows that faith in God is more than that. But let's also not forget the importance of continuing the ritual, temple rituals. And so there's a whole kind of panegyric to Simon, son of Onias. I don't have that sort of thing on chapter 50, who gets more press than almost any of the other fathers. And he was just a priest during the time that he wrote this, who helped rebuild and restore the temple. So it's very important, the author here, that you're maintaining those traditions. The prophets that get the most praise are those who did great miracles. So there's a lot, Elijah and Elisha get more than Moses. because they did powerful miracles. So it's an interesting version. The prophets, as far as the prophetic message, don't get a lot. But it's the ones who did mighty deeds, and miracles that are highlighted. Of course, Solomon gets as much as David because he built the temple. So the conclusion is on pages 9 and 10. Instruction and understanding and knowledge I have written in this book. Jesus, son of Eleazar, son of Sirach of Jerusalem, whose mind poured forth wisdom. Pages 9 and 10, Sirach 50. Happy are those who concern themselves with these things, and those who lay them to heart will become wise. For if they put them into practice, they will be equal to anything. For the fear of the Lord is their path. And then he just ends with a prayer. The last line of that verse 9, and I sent up my prayer from the earth and begged for rescue from death. I cried out, Lord, you are my Father. Do not forsake me. Very end, verse 12. My prayer was heard. You saved me from destruction and rescued me in time of trouble. For this reason, I thank you and praise you, and I bless the name of the Lord. Now, when they discovered Hebrew version, there's actually more added. This goes on to give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to the God who praises, his mercy endures forever. Give thanks to the guardian of Israel, his mercy endures forever. It's like one of the Psalms.
Sounds
The
like
one
a
we-
litany.
Huh?
Sounds like a litany.
Yeah, and it's, I forget which Psalm that is. In the very conclusion of the book, may your soul rejoice in God's mercy, and may you never be ashamed to praise him. Do your work in good time, in his own time. God will give you your reward. So what are your, I mean, that's 5% of the book. What do you think about it? We petition the PCUSA to put this back in our line.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the New Revised Standard Version. But it's not called a,
Right, but it's not.
yeah.
In the appendix. In the appendix.
Some of this, particularly the, beware of wicked women, is a little out of date. But where's the beware of wicked men? I don't see that.
Yeah.
They're the ones who were doing the scam on.
But just for, I know. I guess particularly these two books, they're moving, it's just, some of it is, okay, it's not us, but it is, well, these are words that are true. And we see what's going on in the world today. I keep saying it's why we keep searching for wisdom when not every chapter, but there is so much practical wisdom about what makes a good and fulfilling life. No, it just doesn't have to be somebody bestseller. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't
Being the bestseller.
Some self-appointed expert who sits on the couch with the kid and everything.
Well, sometimes you
not
can't
a-
connect to something if you haven't experienced.
It's like how do human beings raise children in 1,000 years? You're helping us out to do it.
See, using for reference, I guess, is the question, the guy sitting on the couch.
Sure.
If he was using this for reference, he was doing a good job.
I guess I can do it on repeating myself is that we keep saying for me, and we go back and here's it's like,
But a lot of people aren't reading this, so if he's using this, then it's okay.
That's where it comes down to, you think, in this day and age, we're exactly the people that's being aimed at, you know.
But it was
I mean,
just passed down from generation to generation to generation.
we've ignored you, is what it comes down to. We're there.
Generations are.
We're totally agree.
You know, it's passed down to 7 generations, so if the father is one of the people,
Oh,
7 generations are gonna be wicked because they didn't get the wisdom and knowledge.
so, anyway.
There is a wisdom about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
People out where.
There's an ad gets me because I think they say age comes with wisdom, and I say wisdom comes with age.
Maybe.
It's all in one book, but it's in the Bible, different places, like
Right.
you say, it's just this kind of puts it in one place, so that they. I can see why they say, why use this when we already have it? Spread out, so, I mean, it's in there, but it's just not.
No, yes.
Step by step.
I guess I'm not being religious, just that I read through some of this stuff. It's like, you know, human beings, we learned these life lessons thousands of years ago. And
Yeah, it didn't mean we learned it.
I know. we just-
Every child has to relearn, and every child translates it into their own age.
And if it isn't presented to you correctly.
And
that's a
everybody,
child.
everybody's
You're
wisdom
gonna
is
have
different.
a hard time.
Well, not according to Sirach. Maybe we need to do a modern version of this.
Everybody's wisdom is different.
It becomes basically what it says here. The basis of your wisdom comes from what it says in the Bible.
One of the things that says here is keep
Some of,
practicing, you know.
Some of it came-
Don't lose your way and.
some of it
Go
came,
off somewhere.
Yeah, don't, because there's plenty of wisdom. You could read. You
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know, I heard your morning, I think also think we're dean as well.
Anybody, it's not-
some,
build it, it's not-
some of it came from your grandmother. Right?
Really, you gotta stick with something and. The thing I maintain to my atheistic friends or whatever, the ones who refuse to darken the door of a church, and there's good reasons, they have good reasons, you know, we are full of hypocrites, right?
That's what you're.
That's the way it is, you know? But if you don't keep trying, I equate it to the golf course, when you go play golf, you're nice to your partners, you know, the guys you're playing against, because it ruins their game if you yell at them, you know, and you don't want them yelling at you too. So same thing, you come here and you practice being a nice person, basically. And you gotta keep doing it, and this wisdom is how to do that, basically.
People within, you know, individuals, ego in society, so much wisdom is not that what's gonna make me happy.
Right,
It's about I'm connected to other people, I'm connected to.
It makes something
It's
in
relationships, it's not just what's in it for me.
right,
And I think that's kind of the countercultural message, it's not this ethical egoism.
right. Well, it's good for everybody.
It's how
For
we,
the individuals.
which is need to be part of the community.
Some of that
You hear
wisdom
about
comes
other
from your
people,
grandmother
it
too.
comes back to you and it is.
Some of that
your
wisdom
effort
comes
because
from
you're
your
happy.
grandmother.
And
Just like
even
his
if
came from
you're
his
not
grandfather.
getting this-
Right, the grandmother was, you gotta watch out, she might be.
Off topic, on good, because I teach ethics, and we said that, so we just finished the unit on ethical egoism and Ayn Rand, that's why I came out. And for years, when we did that, everybody said, I like this, you know, what's in my long-term self-interest? And I used to, I said, well, they're adolescents, this is kind of a philosophy that they would like, it's very self-centered. But this year I introduced it in both sections, like, this is terrible. You know, it seems like in some ways bad, for 2 or 3 years, I think I said, does anybody appeal this philosophy? I'm teaching it the exact same way. Like, no, this isn't perfect, this is terrible, we don't like this. So some things happen that there's, at least in all school, egoism and Rand way of thinking, it seemed appealing in the past.
You might
now,
get a
I
cold.
don't really like it. Maybe there's a reaction against that. Look at it, I don't know, we used to-
And you are in your class.
He's not in that class. He's in my class.
This takes time. These schools have competition during time.
I'm just idly thinking there's a trickle down that egoism is not, they see too much of it, they don't like it.
Right.
Huh?
And it takes a lot of time for things to, in a culture to change from. Milton Fried really,
Don't sneeze, you might get a cold.
Something more ruthless.
Just curiosity, what age are these kids taking this class?
For the ethics,
Yeah.
like 17.
Okay. Do you think that they are more mature or less mature than before? Is that a maturity level or that we don't, that's?
I just usually heard my loins prepared that when we watched the video of Anne Rand, the usually being interviewed by Mike Wallace. Well, she just slays it out, And usually in that, other one, they used to people say, that's right, not should I have to take care of anybody but myself? And now there's just, no, that's terrible. So I don't think it's maturity, it's just.
Well, I think that some cultures are more relational than others.
Right.
And I think that they're the ones that can't stand the idea that me first and only.
But they've also seen it's double-edged sort of social media. I think this generation, it's no longer a novelty, they've been hurt by it.
Mhm.
So they're also starting to see that this online virtual community is not the same as being with people in person. I think there is
Well, I'm sure they've
Yeah.
experienced that.
Thank
We
you.
have, they're getting.
So next week, there's no handouts, it's the book, the letter of James.
Okay,
So we're gonna see how James is.
I might send out the announcement earlier because I'm gonna have to go back in town until late Friday night.
You want me to send a blurb or something? What did I say? 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I got your original. I might send it to them and then we do it on Saturday.
Where are you going?
Say, well, okay. You're up to stuff.
Thank you.
You want to get your stuff in?
Evan, John, I think you should look at the financial. Market guys. One day when the market's up, they don't know why, when it goes down, they don't know why.
Well, I think it's those lot of people manipulating it.
Bye. Thank you for your contributions.